Hi there and welcome to Focus on Frisco. I'm Shannon Fallon. Great to see everybody again this month. We've got a lot more to talk about. We're going to talk again about parks and what's going on within the next couple of years, which you guys can start to expect, which is very exciting because that's certainly one of the draws of our town, one of the many, of course. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about housing and some different programs that are coming through. So I'm really happy that you guys are here. Stick around for just a couple minutes. You're watching Focus on Frisco. Thanks for sticking around. You are watching Focus on Frisco. I'm Shannon Fallon, and Susan Lee decided to come back with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming back. You know, it was really fun to talk to you last week, or last month, because we kind of touched on a lot of those things that the people coming into town get super excited about. You know, yes. I don't know about you, but having kids, you start to Google parks when you're heading somewhere new.
Yeah.
And we have so many cool parks. And what we're talking about today, and kind of touched on certainly last time, was what is going to be done to improve them and make them even more of a draw.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming back. I appreciate your time. Where did all the emphasis on parks come from?
Sure. So all this sort of came out of the community plan, the 2019 community plan update, which we talked about last time,
yes.
which is sort of a broad range community planning document. As a part of that process, Town Council asked us to specifically focus on parks and take a deeper look at all of our community park assets. So I think we have in the past few years put a lot of energy and attention towards the Peninsula Recreation Area,
yeah.
right? We've made some big enhancements out there. There's a brand new skate park. We have an awesome pump track, Nordic.
It's really cool out there.
It's amazing. It is amazing. So that's our largest park probably in town. We've also spent a lot of time and energy looking at the marina and how that park can grow and become even better over time. But we hadn't really looked at our smaller neighborhood parks. So pocket parks, parks that the community, really uses a lot in their day-to-day lives, and also are an attraction to visitors as well. So Town Council said, hey, focus on those parks a little bit as part of this broader community plan document. And then out of that, we said, wow, there's some real cool things that we could start to do with these parks to enhance them, make sure we're maintaining them to the right standards, and that they're continuing to be an amazing part of our community fabric.
Well, what it's really neat, I think, is that these parks in and around the town you go from these great big parks, and like the Marina Park, I mean, that's a pretty good sized park.
Yeah.
And then Walter Byron, that's one that, is it's such a big draw no matter where you are. But then you do have those little ones that you were mentioning as pocket parks.
Yeah.
And those are kind of the quiet respites that you can see from time to time that, somebody maybe during their lunch hour that's working can go sit in and things like that. But that being said, you take the pocket park like Pioneer Park, and there are so many different ways that you could enhance it. Yeah. Because I would also venture to say it's right next to the tennis courts, that people aren't necessarily viewing that as a park per se. I mean, it's kind of right there.
Yeah.
But this is actually one of the parks that you really kind of delved into about what can you do to make it a little bit better. So what were the parks that you guys ended up doing the most focus on? Sure.
So the parks we focused on for this process are the Pioneer Park, which is between 5th and 6th on Galena.
Right.
And not everybody knows about it.
Right.
But it is a tennis court park with kind of a nature area. We looked at Meadow Creek, which is on Meadow Drive.
A nature area is a great way to put that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some native vegetation. There's picnic. It's kind of a passive enjoyment sort of area.
And it really is. It's just kind of, you get in there and you're like, wow, I'm kind of in nature.
Yeah, in the middle, you're right in the middle of town. Block off Main Street.
Yeah.
Meadow Creek Park, which is on Meadow Drive, kind of we call it the Gateway District, which is sort of more of the, 203, exit 203, Walmart, Base Camp, those developments.
Right.
And then it's also backing to a residential neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And then we also looked at Walter Byron Park, which is kind of our neighborhood park. It's in the center of a residential area.
Yeah.
It's very well used and well loved.
Yes.
And then,
365 days a year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then finally we also looked at Old Town Hall and Community Center.
Gotcha.
And so those are also a little bit unknown. Old Town Hall has a small green space. Just behind it, Old Town Hall is the visitor center.
Right.
So just off Main Street on 3rd Street, there is on 3rd Avenue, excuse me, there is a gazebo, some landscaping, great Wi-Fi. The public restrooms are there,
Yeah,
so there's
great
sort of
Wi-Fi.
great Wi-Fi. So there's sort of a little pocket park there, and then also adjacent to the community center, there's a small green space there as well. So trying to look at those spaces and say, hey, what do we do here? How do we use these today, and how could we enhance them and preserve them for the future?
Right. So when you looked at those, what was was there a common thread of what people loved about all of them? Was there anything that people said, yeah, this is why we like this? Or was it all pretty different?
It was pretty unique for each of the parks. Yeah. And that was, it was interesting to see who showed up. So we held public meetings. We held a meeting at each of the parks in all kinds of fun weather during the month of May.
I was going to say, I think your second one was torrential.
There was thunder, there was lightning, there was snow.
Yeah.
We had all of it. I think I made it snow every Wednesday in May.
I think you did too.
Yeah, it was good. But each park, you got a different group of folks that turned up that used that park on a daily basis and loved it for a variety, different reasons for each park. So it was interesting to see how the parks were being used, how people felt about those parks, and what ideas they had for the park, because that's your primary user, right? So that was really interesting. We also did an online survey that was community-wide. We had about 450 people, residents and second homeowners that participated in that survey.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to see their thoughts, right? Because they were they weren't living next door to that park maybe, but they still had thoughts and opinions about how that park is being used and maintained.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so we got kind of the on-site specific view of the park, and then we also got this broader kind of community view of the park. And yeah, what's awesome is they each fill kind of a unique area for the community, and that's great. You want that, right? You want a variety of opportunities within your neighborhoods.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was cool to see.
So let's start with Walter Byron, because I think that seems to be, knowing what I know about the talking points, is that seems to be the big one, kind of the first one that you guys are really going to attack.
Yes. Walter Byron also seems to get the most use out of any of our neighborhood parks.
Out of the neighborhood parks. I was going to say, even over the Marina Park?
We were really just digging into the neighborhood parks with this, and we kind of said, let's hold the PRA, the Adventure Park and the Marina Park, let's hold those a little bit separate for this process. Let's really just look at the ones that are located in our residential neighborhoods and take a deeper look at those. So yeah, Walter Byron, I mean, you could tell by how many people showed up to the meetings, right? It was very obvious that was probably the one that was going to rise to the surface rise to the top because of just the amount and the diversity of the use that Walter Byron gets. We got a lot of people using that park for a lot of different reasons, which is amazing.
Well, it is. I mean, just in and of itself, as you enter Walter Byron Park, and that's kind of off of, I guess, is it still 4th at that point, or as it turns into Creekside? I think it's Creekside. Again, 2 blocks off of Main Street. But as you kind of go in there, it really, as you move through, it changes quickly, because on your right-hand side, if you're going in from one side, you've got the park, and then you have the river on the side, and then there's this great big field, and then a little further down there's a volleyball court and a little pond, and so it really is diverse. So I can only imagine that the people that did show up all had different reasons for it. And all the uses that they did.
And it's not a huge space. So all of these different users are playing nice together. In a very small space. There are different times of the day, different uses are kind of happening on the multi-purpose field. And that's great, because you're getting a lot of value for a small amount of land. So yeah, that one did kind of rise to the top in terms of priorities.
And so what was the biggest thing that you heard about Walter Byron? What did people really want to see?
I think because it gets so much use, some of the facilities that are there are kind of nearing their life expectancy, if you will, and it's time to upgrade them. So the restrooms, the play.
Will those ever be year-round?
The goal is to open them up and make them year-round. So replace that existing building with a new facility that can be heated and insulated and open year-round.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then also looking at that play equipment. The play equipment is about 20 years old, and so replacing that, upgrading it, making it meet current standards.
Oh my gosh. And current standards, that's going back to those really shiny slides that are super high and steep, right?
Yeah, the stainless steel ones, no.
Darn, I love those.
Trends change in playground equipment,
Right.
and also we learn things over time about use patterns and how the sun's moving across the sky. You know, I know we do hear that those slides get really hot at the playground.
Yeah, they're toasty.
Yeah.
But again, it goes along the way of, you know, toughening our kids up.
Yeah.
But I think it's really cool. So there ended up being a couple of different options,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. I think we utilized the services of a local landscape design firm, Norris Design. And so we had them help us with the whole public outreach process. And then we set them out to generate some concepts based on what they had heard. And we tried to develop concepts that were sensitive to cost. You know, money obviously is an object, and we want to be sensitive to what these park improvements cost.
Absolutely.
So we had them kind of give us a couple of different scenarios.
Right.
And that was at town council's direction. You know, they wanted to be wise with their use of our funds.
Yeah.
And so trying to get as much of the community desires into a plan that's also cost efficient.
Yeah.
So they gave us two different concepts. There's no major changes. I think they were trying to improve circulation through the park. So if you're at Walter Byron now, there's sort of one major corridor that gets you from kind of the parking area to the rec path along the river.
Right.
That sees a lot of users and sometimes user conflicts. You have little kids on Strider bikes, you have big kids on road bikes, you have people walking, you have strollers, you have kind of a congested little area right there. So trying to break up some of that congestion and move people through a little bit smoother. We heard from a lot of people, you know, the park functions well as it is, but wouldn't it be great if we could add new layers to this park, like some education about the wetlands that are right there.
Which is a pretty cool idea.
Yeah. Maybe some more opportunities to engage people with the river, you know, so that you can have this quiet, passive experience along the river if you're not interested in the, you know, very active, you know, multi-use lawn where you see, you know, every sport imaginable, dog running, everything happening on that field. So trying to maybe diversify it a little bit to add this other layer, this kind of environmental education layer, this opportunity for passive recreation at that park, but then just enhancing what's there.
I think that's awesome. And then the second one that kind of made its way up to the top.
Yeah, the second one that was kind of prioritized is Meadow Creek. So when we visited Meadow Creek, we had a lot of neighborhood residents come out and talk to us about feelings of safety and security at the park. So trying to make it a more attractive place for people to visit so that they feel safer there, so that they feel more welcome there. Making some adjustments to the landscaping, making some adjustments to the site furnishings and the circulation. Lighting. Another thing that was really popular at Meadow Creek is winter use. That is our neighborhood ice pond.
Just to tell you, I was going to ask, so I'm glad you brought it up.
So we had some ice skaters attend our meetings, and we also heard a lot about ice skating in our community-wide survey.
So what's the story?
So trying to make the ice more accessible. So, you know, easing that transition between where you're parking your car and where you're putting your skates on and where you're actually entering the ice surface. And then just working on the possibility of some lighting so that you can use it into the later evening hours in the winter when it gets dark earlier, and then working on maintenance.
And that's got to be the toughest part. And I am a big advocate of making that a dedicated ice if it's not going to be somewhere else, at least for the time being. But I can only imagine, I'm sympathetic to how that's probably not the top priority for public works and stuff and such, because when we get snow, and that's probably a tough one to do. And with the other recreation that could potentially go on there, such as ice fishing, and where it's located, I get it. That's got to be tough, but it sure would be nice.
It is nice, and I think it's a unique
and I do too
amenity that we are able to offer. You know, this. I mean, it's beautiful views from Meadow Creek.
Oh my gosh, it's outstanding.
The pond, it's amazing, and to have that type of ice surface in our community is pretty
So is it
cool.
something that the town council is going to start to look at, is actually making that a dedicated, in the wintertime, dedicated pond for skating?
Yeah, we've tried to eliminate ice fishing on that pond and direct ice fisher people to other parts of the community.
That's a great idea.
Where they could go ice fishing. It's sometimes easier said than done. Yeah. So trying to retrain those habits. You know, if somebody's been ice fishing there for the past few years, they may think that's the best place to go ice fishing. Right. Meanwhile, you also have everybody wants to ice skate there. Yeah. So trying to redirect some of those users.
Those two certainly don't work hand in hand. No. That's one of those that is definitely a conflict.
Yeah.
But okay, so I can see where you guys are coming from on that, but that would be great if it starts to move forward.
Yes.
And then as you mentioned, there's Pioneer Park and then also the community center parks.
Sure.
The old community center
Yeah,
as
the
well.
community center park, I think we sort of said, let's reserve that for a future date. You know what I mean? There's a community center there, and then it's almost like the backyard of the community center. And so those kind of function as one. And so we said, let's set that aside for now. Let's look at the old town hall, the visitor information center. We have a lot of users coming to the visitor information center on a daily basis year round. So how could we enhance that space back there to make it really feel like a public plaza where people are welcome to come?
And do people generally hang out there? I mean, is it?
You see a few users back there.
Right.
A lot of people you're waiting for your friends, you know, in the bathroom or in the visitor information center. It's right, you know, it's on that first block off of Main Street. So I think there's a lot of potential there. It's very heavily landscaped. And then the gazebo. And so you'll often see like one or two people sitting in the gazebo. But I think because of the way the park feels and what we heard from the feedback we got from the community was that it feels very private. And so if there's one or two people in there, you're kind of like, maybe I won't go in there.
Right.
But we want to open it up and make it more
So that was what the community outreach kind of brought to you, is that if there is anybody in there, it feels like nobody else should enter. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And if it's a public park, let's make it feel like a public park.
Right.
And that is something we kind of heard about all of the parks. Pioneer Park, I heard that comment. Is it a public tennis court or is it a private? No, it's public. So we want the community to know.
Well, those are such interesting things to hear.
Yeah, it is interesting because you live here and you never think about it. But as a newcomer, you're like, well, I didn't know if that belonged to that HOA or what. So we want to make sure that they're signed consistently, that they have common site elements, that people know when they walk up on it, oh yeah, this is my community park.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. That really is. So here's a question. We may not be able to touch on it too much, but dog parks. Has that ever, you know, what has the consensus been between whether it's the community or even town council? What are you guys talking about with that?
We've heard about dog parks a lot, and that is high on a community list of desires. We heard that at the community.
Like a dedicated dog park. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oddly, on any of the site-specific meetings that we held, every single one said, well, it's not appropriate for this park, right? Dog parks do take up a certain amount of land. They need certain common features. They need fences, and they need water, and they need areas that you can rotate because the vegetation gets pretty heavily used.
Right.
So it needs a certain size parcel to make it feasible. And because of the size of these parks and the intensity of use they're already experiencing, we didn't feel that it made sense to, you know, take away a portion of any one of these parks and pull it off the table for the use it's already getting to dedicate it to a dog park.
Interesting.
For example, Walter Byron. It's a favorite place for people to go throw balls for the dog and run their dogs in the morning. But it doesn't make sense to throw up a fence then to say, well, okay, you can't go play soccer there at 4:00 in the afternoon. Because you're saying, well, this field now is we're going to limit it to this one use.
Yeah.
But we don't have a ton of land at any of these parks, and so they have to sort of...
Or elsewhere even. I mean, if you look at the town as a whole, I would be hard-pressed, I think, to find another parcel of land that you could say, here it is.
Yeah.
This is where we need to put the dog park.
Minimum of an acre. You know, you would need to set it aside to say this is solely for that use. And so it didn't seem to make sense at any of these 4 parks.
So is it kind of still on the underlying wants and needs,
definitely.
I assume?
Yeah, definitely. And we are trying to memorialize what we heard from that survey so that it doesn't go away. It's still valuable information. It still stays on the table. It's just not for these 4 parks. It didn't really make sense.
All right. So it sounds like you got from the community outreach that people love the parks in general, wanted them to feel a little bit more welcoming if there were already either 1 or 2 people on the small ones or big crowds, that it just still seemed the signage and everything kind of showed that that this was for everybody.
Yeah.
And that some of those resources, such as the bathrooms and the buildings and things and safety, were all big issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really just modernizing them, make sure we're maintaining them to current standards.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. So what's the next step?
Next step, council has sort of prioritized the improvements at Walter Byron, so we're going to move forward with trying to implement new bathrooms, new play equipment for Walter Byron in
a couple years.
We're hoping to be able to accomplish it in 2020. So they have
Wow.
set aside funds for us in 2020.
That's exciting.
And then moving forward 2021 towards the safety security enhancements at Meadow Creek Park.
Gotcha.
And then just moving forward with continuing to maintain and upgrade our town park facilities, because it's an important part of our community. It's an important resource that we have here.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure we're taking care of them.
Well, I think that sounds pretty great.
Yeah.
It is. It's so much fun to even walk past them if you don't have a chance
Yeah.
to play. Just seeing all the action and really the feel of community is very cool.
Yeah.
So I would suggest, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that people can still give you their thoughts on what's going on with these
Always.
things,
Yeah.
especially in those little pocket parks and those smaller parks that don't have that top 1 and 2 priority yet.
Yes.
So it'll be fun. It'll be probably a continued discussion.
Ongoing discussion.
Yeah.
We'll take some final plans before Town Council on October 8th.
Okay.
If you're interested to come to that meeting,
Sounds good.
more than welcome. Yeah.
That's great. So
Yeah.
that is October 8th. Of course, it's a Tuesday and everything starts at 7.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Susan, thanks very much. I appreciate your time. I love getting kind of the update on it and some of the background that we weren't able to cover on the last time that we talked. So it's very cool. And again, as always, I recommend that everybody's, if you have a chance, get into these meetings, these town council meetings. If you get one of those postcards or something in your email that says, here, we want your opinion, go for it, because this is what's coming out of it. And it's really exciting. And to maybe have your hand and your opinion in it would probably be a pretty good opportunity. So we're going to take a quick break here on Focus on Frisco. When we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit more about housing, so stay with us. A lot of interesting stuff happening in that arena as well. Thanks for tuning in to Focus on Frisco.